Canadian Tire will take over Hudson's Bay's intellectual property for $30 million. The sale will include the Bay's brand, its iconic stripes, and its coat of arms symbol. For more on all this, let's go to Doug Stevens, founder of Retail Profit. Doug, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Marilla.
Is this a good move, do you think, for Canadian Tire? Does it fit with who they are?
I think it's an exceptional move, and I don't often say that. So I think this is a fantastic move. I think when you look at the price of these intellectual assets, so we're talking about the Bay logo, the iconic Bay stripes. We're talking also about Gluckstein Home and Distinctly Home and apparel brands like Hudson, North, and Zellers. I mean, it is a grab bag of value at a really good time, given the sense of nationalism that we're seeing right now in the country. So we have an iconic Canadian brand in Canadian Tire, salvaging an iconic Canadian brand in the form of Hudson's Bay. So yeah, I think it's an exceptional deal and one they can really make some remarkable progress with.
Let's talk about the iconic stripes pattern, of course, which everybody knows and appreciates. What kind of merchandise can you see selling at Canadian Tire branded with something like that?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because I think that, they do have to be careful here. I think there's going to be a desire on the part of marketers at Canadian Tire to want to put these stripes on just about everything. And I think they have to resist that temptation. But I do think it potentially gives them license to go into potentially categories or lines of merchandise that they don't have right now, given their current positioning as pretty much a hardware and auto parts retailer. So I think it could potentially get them further into the home category, the furniture category, and certainly into the apparel category. I mean, we can't forget that it wasn't that long ago that Hudson's Bay was actually sponsoring Olympic teams. So, I mean, there's currency in this brand, and certainly they can do some great things with that, with those iconic stripes.
You just touched on this, but we do think of Canadian Tire as sort of the auto parts store, right? Go to get your oil to fill up your car. I'm wondering if you think it's going to change the direction of where they're going, because they did announce sort of a revamp, and I'm wondering how much fits with that revamp. And what about their other stores, that Marks, for example, could they benefit from this as well?
Yeah, so let's talk about Canadian Tire first. I think it's a really good point. We do associate Canadian Tire, with hardware, sporting goods, and a big part of their business being auto parts. And let's face it, automobiles today are not the way automobiles were 10, 15, 20 years ago. They're basically computers on wheels today. So they're a lot harder for the average person to do any sort of service work on themselves. So I do see that over the next decade or so, I see a declining role on the part of auto parts in the business. And that's why this acquisition may be all that much more important, because it really can take them into lines and categories where maybe they're not quite as strong in terms of brand recognition. But I think your point too about, we can't forget that Canadian Tire is a lot more than just Canadian Tire. It's Mark's Work Wearhouse, it's Sport Check, and I think that there's loads of room for the Hudson's Bay brand to make its way into those channels as well.
Do you see a standalone Bay store tucked into one of these stores, the ways the Bay tried to tuck in some of the Zeller stores?
I don't. I don't discount the idea that we could see some incarnation of a Hudson's Bay store at some point. I don't think it's going to look anything like the traditional Hudson's Bay model, because I think, for the most part, I think that we've proven that there isn't a lot of room for that model in the Canadian market anymore. But I do see potentially smaller format stores, maybe something more along the lines of a Winners or a Marshalls in terms of its size. In terms of store within store concepts, again, I think they have to be very, very careful, especially in the initial stages, as to how they treat this brand. Right now, we know that there's been life breathed into the Hudson's Bay brand, as Canadians have sort of mourned the loss of Hudson's Bay and really felt this sense of nationalism. So I think they have to treat it very carefully. And so I don't anticipate, I could be wrong, but I don't anticipate any store-in-store concepts right out of the bat.
Got it. Doug Stevens, great to have you. Doug is the founder of Retail Profit.